So we had a goal for this summer to get the house fully sealed up for the outside weather before the snow flew, and we seem to have accomplished that. It is sealed up, and the only snow we've had so far has been a little dusting up on the mountaintops. With the roof on, windows in, the only thing that had not been sealed to the outside was the two doors. So getting those in is what finished sealing it up. Now obviously there's siding and stuff to do, but if it rains or blows sideways or any of those things, this is fully sealed. But how exactly we got there was a bit of a process. There has been some issues with building materials the whole way through this project that we'll go into here in a bit, and I will show you how I made our plain white steel doors look like this one. This is actually the second time this door was hung. Clay had installed it initially and then popped the door off, both so that I could do the painting of it and so that he could fix some more of the issues with it. So come along and we will show you how we got the house fully sealed up to the outside. So these doors did start out as plain white steel doors, which we picked for several reasons: their durability, their insulation, and their general non-toxicness. It's crazy what some doors are made out of. As you will see when we get to doing the siding, the house is basically going to be the same color as all the other buildings on the property, gray walls and black roof and trim. So I didn't want just the plain white door inside of that forever, and I was trying to decide if I should just paint it black, paint it dark gray, and I saw somebody's idea, which I can link to their how-to video down below if I remember, but how to make it look like you had an actual wood door, even when you had the benefits of the durability and such of a steel one. So I liked that idea. It didn't seem that hard to do, but I was still a little nervous to try this because I've never done anything like this. And I followed the instructions, and I think it came out beautifully. So I started with some stain. I'll try to link below to the products I used. I don't know if they're the most perfect ones or not, but they did seem to work very well. I picked a very almost black brown because I did want it to coordinate with the trim and roof and such on our building. There are many other browner looking colors, but that's the one I picked. I wanted it to look like a very, very dark stained wood. And I took the door, and as you can see here, started out with wiping the stain on just with a little rag, kind of generously onto the panels. You got to think about the order you do this here, and I messed up the order here at one point. And then you get this cool little tool that I'm using now called a wood graining tool, which, as you can see, does a wood looking grain. It's kind of crazy. I don't actually understand how it makes that pattern looking at the end of the tool. It's these little semi-curved lines of rubber, and if you kind of rock it back and forth, it makes a pattern. And if you don't like your pattern, like you got two knots, like see there, I made two like identical looking boards that had the knots in the same places. I didn't really like that. Just go over it again, as long as you do it right away, and you can wipe out whatever you did and do a different pattern. Once you give it a bit of time and it starts to dry, you can't do that anymore. But right away, if you're not happy with your grain line, some people I saw wiped it out with their rag and then went over it again, but it seemed to be wet enough to just go right back over and redo a different grain pattern. There's several different wood grainers, and I think everyone would come out with their own texture to some degree because everyone's hand motion is different and so on, but I was pretty happy with how this came out. Then I was wiping the stain on the edges just to protect the edges of the door as well, and then went on to doing the other. It had this actually been a wood door, the other wood panels. So this is not hard to do. You do want to wear gloves. You do want to have good ventilation because this stain is kind of messy and kind of stinky, but it was not a difficult or challenging thing to work with. And I don't have a lot of experience of doing any kind of painting other than, plain white on walls, which is about the only thing I've done. So anyway, this was was a fun project. Got the edges done and then went back to doing my wood panels. I probably should have just done all of the edges first. I wanted them to have a chance to dry because they weren't very well protected, even though this was supposed to be a pre-primed door. Several of the edges were either raw metal and or raw wood on the top, exposed with nothing over it. So anyway, got those done and go on with the rest of the painting here. So if you look at how an actual wood panel door is put together, you will see which direction the real wood grain runs, and that's what I was trying to duplicate the look of here on the steel. So the little inset panel things, did those first, and even though the little curved part where you can't run the wood grainer looks right now with the stain just wiped on there like it's not going to match at all, it actually did come out matching pretty good by the time I get done. You'll see that here in a minute. Even though the stain dried pretty fast in our climate, it was almost 70 this day and about 0% humidity, so it dried considerably faster than one of the people who I was watching said it took like 48 hours to dry. Mine was fully dry in about 6 hours. I still had plenty of time to wipe the stain on in, kind of out over into another area where I was going to then run my grain up and down the sides the opposite direction, but I could do my crossbars easily out over, and it did not, dry too much to then wipe that out, making my board look going the other way, if that makes sense. I didn't put the stain on super thick here with the rag. I probably could have done it a little thicker. By the time I did the door frames after doing the door, I did go a little thicker, and that worked fine too. I didn't want to get it too heavy was my thought, and it's probably always better to do lighter first and you can go darker later, but that's what I did. So here again, I'm using the wood graining tool to make different board looking patterns, and you can run it different directions. You can make more or less knots. You kind of figure it out as you do it and rock it, what patterns it gives you. It's kind of a fun tool to use. And like I said, if I got a board stripe that I wasn't happy with, like there, I didn't like how mine had caught and rocked going over the doorknob, I could just do a new board right on top of it and make a different pattern. I did try to be a little careful to get it going in a straight-ish line like a board would be, but they're, real boards. I went and looked at a bunch of them, like what looks like a real wood grain, and we have some actual boards around the property that have grain that looks much like this. It's fairly heavy. There's knots sawn sideways. There's straight, stripy parts, and so on. So at this point, it's like, okay, this is coming out really neat. I actually like the way this is going to look, and I hadn't been sure when I started. I had to go to the top of the door there, do one more board going side to side, and then I got to do the side panels. And I should have done, this is where you can see I messed up, I should have done that little center bit between the two inset panels before doing the side-to-side ones that I just did. I forgot the order I should have been working in there, but I was able to fix it, fortunately. I just should have done that first, and then I could have gone on the side-to-side and wiped out my ends over it like I'm about to on the up and downs here. I think you'll see what I'm talking about. But if you get your order in which you do these correct, it's really easy because you can go out over the ends and work your way out, and you clean up your edges by doing the next panel the opposite direction. So there I just, you can see I wiped out the ends of the side to side to get this board completely up and down, and I wasn't entirely happy with my first try there on the long stripe, so I did another one. And then I remembered to do this part. That's the part I forgot. And I was able to do that fairly neat looking, but that should have been done before the sides to side. Coming on down, again, you can see I had plenty of time. It hadn't dried yet to just wipe out the ends of that board and do the sides. Isn't this looking neat? This is one coat of creating the wood grain. Pretty happy with how it turned out. Now that's just got to dry for a while, and then we can darken it up. As I mentioned, that didn't take that long to dry. In our climate, some places it may have taken a couple days. It took about 6 hours till you want to be able to touch the heaviest wood grain dark areas and not have them feel tacky anymore. If they are not fully dry, you will wipe out your wood grain when you do the next coat of stain, which I'm doing now. So you can see this time I tried to be sure I remembered that middle stripe without waiting too long. But once again, I'm taking the same stain and my little rag, new little rag, and just wiping it on. You want to wipe in the direction of the grain because even the rag motion will leave some marks, which works out well because it ends up looking like more of the saw marks or grain in the wood, but you don't want to go crossways with your wood. And there, I didn't quite get particular enough with it on this coat. I wish I'd gotten those on the left-hand panel there. I wish I had gotten my rag stripes a little bit straighter. You can see there's a hair of a curve. I realized that and was able to semi-correct it with the next coat. But if I was doing again, when I did the next door, I did try to make sure that I had those wiped really straight so it would look more right. But I'm just wiping a thin layer over here, so now instead of my door looking basically black and white or dark brown and white, I'm getting it to start having some of the depth of looking like real wood. And those little corners are just kind of filled in, and once again they right away think, oh, that's not going to work because there's no wood grain in there, but the rag itself is leaving some striping, which is why you want to be careful where you're leaving your rag wipe marks. And by the time I got done with all the coats, it did not stand out at all. It just looked like somebody had sawed wood in there. I think I did come back and try to touch up a little bit of that. But see again here where I had wiped on the center panel where I remembered to do it out over, I was able to then wipe it out going on my side to side panels and so on. And then finally the edge panels. And so that was the first coat. Again, I went pretty thin. I probably could have gone a little bit heavier, but I didn't want to get too much. I didn't know how dark it would end up being. So that's what I did. And then after that dried, I did a second coat, which is what I'm doing here. And that was starting to really add some depth to the wood. And you, again, want to let it fully dry in between there. If you do not let it dry, you will pull up all of the work you have already done. And then I decided I wanted just a little darker yet, so I did a third coat. Had I done some of the other coats a little heavier, probably 2 would have been fine, but I went for 3, and I'm really, really happy with the way it looks. So now my door is kind of looking like a wood door, and I think it came out beautifully. And then I covered all of that with 2 coats of polyurethane to seal it up and protect it. You can see what I mean about the rag marks themselves kind of adding some grain texture. If the light's just right, you can actually see the ripple reflection of the grain edge and so on. Then, since we have our very cool copper windows for the house, I decided the window for the door ought to look like it matched. So I was able to find some hammered copper paint. It's not an exact match for real copper, but it looks pretty close, and paint the window frames with that. That came out really nice. A single coat did an excellent job because I wasn't really trying to protect the plastic frame at all, just to make it match and coordinate with the rest of the building. And then I did the same wood grain and black on the door frames, and then we hung the door, and I think they came out beautifully. And this wasn't, other than the waiting on it to dry in between coats, was not that hard to do, and I think it came out lovely. So if you want to paint a steel door to look like wood, and you don't have to do such a black wood, you may want one of the many shades of brown wood look that you could do, but I'm really happy with how it came out, and I think it's very cool. And thanks to the many people whose blogs and videos I watched for how-to ideas to create this. Hopefully that's helpful if you want to do something similar. So overall, I'm really happy with how this came out. I think it blends in nicely. Forget the Tyvek in between, with the copper windows on either side and on the rest of the house. And especially when I get the siding on there, this is going to look pretty nice. So very happy with that. And this video got long enough, so come back for the next one and we will go into some more of the details on getting these doors actually installed, aside from the painting, and some other things with building in 2025.
Thank you everyone for watching. It means a lot, and I hope you learned something along the way.
If you know somebody else who would enjoy this as well, share it with them.